I'd like to take a moment to try and fix this one because my ideas are straightforward enough, surprisingly cohesive, and it'll give me an opportunity to pitch my version of what the modern Star Wars era should have been in another video. Rogue One came out a year after Force Awakens, and my gut tells me they were being developed around the same time. Released alongside Rogue One was the companion novel Catalyst, which follows Galen, Lyra, and Krennic as the Republic crumbles around them, slowly becoming the Empire. Which is an era of Star Wars lore that continues to be surprisingly fascinating to me, since the Bad Batch is delving into the human rights issues of the Empire phasing out the clones, and them not knowing where they fit into society since they were bred for war. Between that and Andor, this is definitely the most that I've ever personally hated the Empire. Hey, it only took 46 years, but you finally got me invested. Congratulations. And apparently Andor was filmed and ready for a long time before they actually released it. All of this tells me that someone involved had a plan. Everything about the Rogue One continuity feels like it's carving its own path while still being a very loving follow-up from a faithful fan. So why was it so underplayed? Well, someone else must have decided to throw out that plan in favor of just making it all up. But what if they didn't? What if, instead of jumping straight to the half-assed sequel trilogy, they instead did a prequel sequel? I know 2015 was a wildly different culture as far as how respected the prequels were, but now we know that many people had this unrequited love that they were just waiting to let out. So let's bank on that. Because love them or hate them, the sequels were divisive. Disney was so eager to erase the prequels and focus on nostalgia baiting hard that when they botched it, they just pushed everyone back towards a new appreciation of the prequel trilogy. And now they're trying to nostalgia bait that.
Ironic.
I propose, instead of being divisive and overly reliant on nostalgia, it would have been prudent to instead unite the fans. Give us something that both the original trilogy fans and the prequel fans can get behind. Start with Catalyst. Delve into the details of how the Death Star was originally conceived, what it took to construct it, and how the scientist responsible slowly realized that the peaceful republic he once served was now officially a tyrannical empire that he needed to get his family away from. It is an emotional character thriller spanning basically the entire gap between the trilogies. Then rework Andor into a movie. I know it'll take some sacrifice, but if anyone's gonna complain about Andor, they're gonna say that it's too slow and boring. So if anything, this will just make it more accessible to a wider audience. Both of these movies would have to be 2.5 to 3 hour epics that really show the depravity of the Empire. And finally, release a fine-tuned Rogue One as the climax of this trilogy.
Your father would have been proud of you, Jin.
This would get fans so pumped it'd be like going from Batman and Robin to the Dark Knight movies. You'd unite everybody. Fans of the originals, fans of the prequels, fans of this new trilogy. This would literally be the threads that tied them all together. So after that, you can basically do whatever you want, but you shouldn't. I'd release the Clone Wars finale as a theatrical movie. That show started with a bad theatrical movie. It makes sense to end it with a good one. I don't know what that would mean for the Bad Batch though, considering season 7 was basically a backdoor pilot. I mean, you could still have a season 7. I know there were other planned half-made episodes that never got finished. There was one that I think featured Boba Fett squaring off against Cad Bane, leading to the dent in Boba's helmet. Aha! And you could even use that as setup. Give us a few episodes of the Clone Wars introducing the rivalry between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, and then give us a live-action series showing the culmination of that rivalry. Boba Fett really should have been just the John Wick of the Star Wars universe. A deadly assassin that used to work for all of these crime syndicates, now turns against them all and starts cleaning house, only to have a bunch of other bounty hunters come after him. You working again, Boba? Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. Like a panther. Is that still a meme? With the movies out of the way, you can take a break, relax. You've won over all the fans already. You can take a few years off Star Wars. Because I believe that Star Wars was meant to be an event, I don't think the current pace that Disney is gonna be sustainable in the long run. So take a year or two and then give us Mandalorian Season 1. In this version of history, this would be the first piece of mainstream on-screen media that would show the Star Wars universe post Return of the Jedi. I know it may seem weird to waste that opportunity on a show, but The Mandalorian was already the only reason that Disney Plus was a success in the first place, so you'd just be doubling that success. Also, this way, you can still have the opportunity to make the first movie taking place after Return of the Jedi later on. As much as I personally kind of enjoy The Force Awakens, it does feel like they wasted their only shot. The hype is never gonna be that big again. So let that sit for a year and then give us Mando Season 2. Again, imagine just how much bigger the fan response would be if this was the first time they saw Luke.
A Jedi.
Without Last Jedi to leave a sour taste in their mouth. Honestly, the fan response might almost be too much to handle.
I'm not sure I can handle a party of this magnitude!
Then move on to my Boba Fett pitch, where he actually has a ledger that he's going through, undoing old jobs that he regrets, and Cad Bane is a villain from the start. Then do my reworked Mando Season 3. And that catches us up to the present. Obviously, I have not seen any project yet to come out. But with the announcement of the Ahsoka show and the proposed Mandoverse crossover movie, I feel like I know where they should be going. I present to you now the true sequel trilogy. It's not only a sequel to the originals, but it's a sequel to literally everything that's come before, as well as being a Avengers-level crossover event. That way, fans of the originals, the prequels, and this new Disney era all have something to look forward to and someone to root for. Part 1. The retaking of Mandalore. It's basically The Hobbit, but Star Wars. Ever since Mandalorian Season 2, I thought they were setting up a Mandalore Civil War, which is what I basically want to do now. People were speculating that the episode The Spies was a reference to the Bible, where people of Israel sent out spies to scout out the Promised Land. This is also a story that inspired Tolkien to write The Hobbit, so it makes sense to come full circle in that regard and fully commit to the retaking your homeland aspect. Combine that with stories about the Gold Rush, or the Pioneers, and turn this into a chaotic land grab that the New Republic is desperately trying to keep a hold of. You could include Leia in a supporting role, giving us a look into the politics of this world, following the power vacuum left behind by the collapsing empire. But most of the action would follow the Mando crew. Though I guess in my version of events, a lot of the Mandalorians are jerks now, so I'm not sure how that would go over. You could still have a character like Luke or Ahsoka or Din Djarin stand in for a Gandalf or a Bilbo to provide a more rational viewpoint. They'd spend most of their time proverbially shaking their heads at the pride and stubbornness of those Mandalorians / dwarves. Part 2. The Remnants of the Empire. This movie would focus on Luke and Ahsoka were learning to work together, with potential appearances from Mando or Han Solo or Leia or whoever else. It would capitalize on the concept put down by the Season 3 finale, whereas the Republic needs to hire people to hunt down remaining elements of the Empire. This would either mean Moff Gideon or Thrawn, but personally I'm finding those characters to be a little bit stale, which is not to say you couldn't breathe new life into them. Giancarlo Esposito was certainly there to play in that last episode. Since I scrapped that part of Season 3, you could resurrect it in better form here and actually give some proper development for whatever the heck he was trying to do with clones. I'm still lost. I wanted to care. His acting was good. He seemed genuinely broken up about them destroying his clones, but like, you just introduced that concept. Like, there's no time for me to really feel anything about this. You could take that time here, or you could do something more original. I feel like I should have a specific reference for how I imagine this all playing out, but I can't quite pull it. Basically, it's an ensemble relay race. Start small with a secondary character raiding an Empire base, discovering some information. They pass that information on to another character, who then gets into a sticky situation and has to call a third character for help. Those characters team up, move on to the next location, and the baton keeps getting tossed until it snowballs into a big crossover event at the end where everybody you've met along the way comes together.
Come together!
Part 3, The New Order. I'm not sure what the main threat of this one would be, but it would be more of the Luke Skywalker movie that everybody wanted. I'm sure there's something you could pull from the deep lore and all the legends and stuff like that. I wouldn't really know what that would be, but I'm willing to give someone the opportunity to make me care. Somewhere in here, you could also explore how each character trains the new generation. And I'd take a little inspiration from Cobra Kai, with Luke standing in for Daniel, teaching his followers to use their powers for peace and defense, while someone like Mando would take after Johnny and teach his followers to be more badass. I don't know exactly where that would fit best into the trilogy though, but I feel like the other two have enough going on that now would be the time for that type of thing. Also, at this point, just recast Luke as Sebastian Stan already. I think fans have accepted the idea, and a CGI Luke cannot and should not carry an entire movie, let alone a full trilogy.
The Mandalorian was here. Sometimes I wonder if his heart is in it. What should I do about him?
Maybe you could like gradually shift, like start with CGI Luke, then Sebastian Stan, slightly deep faked, then he's just Sebastian Stan. I don't know if that'd be weird or not, but you can't keep doing the deepfake. I also had some ideas for how to rework the actual sequel trilogy that we got. I don't know how necessary it is now, but the first movie should introduce Death Star tech as basically being nuclear arms. Everybody has it, nobody wants to use it. This would move the world into a Cold War-like era where the First Order is just a struggling terrorist cell trying to spark a conflict rather than being the primary threat themselves. A Jedi, presumably Luke, would train a former stormtrooper, a combination of Finn and Rey, to go undercover on a spy mission reminiscent of James Bond or Mission Impossible, but Star Wars style. This version of The Last Jedi would show the start of a new war, leading to Jedi being, again, hunted down, one by one, killed, or converted to the dark side.
If she ran at me, I'd be like, all right, guys, I'm on her team. Like, we are against it. I'm on her team.
You know how I said I'm taking you LARPing one day? Now I'm not taking you LARPing anymore, because you will defect.
Luke would slowly lose all of the numbers that he had once established. We'd actually get to see his crisis of faith, his darkest day, rather than it just being referenced in a flashback of questionable plausibility.
I will never get people dumping on that scene and saying that's not Luke. Are you freaking kidding me?
That's the Lukiest Luke that ever Luked.
They have Luke being willing to murder his nephew on the off chance that the fact he might be starting to turn to the dark side. Think about the massive flip that is from the Luke Skywalker of Return of the Jedi, where far from someone just entertaining thoughts of a dark Jedi, you have the second most evil person in the galaxy, Darth Vader, and Luke thinks he can redeem Darth Vader.
And people say, where's the Luke who was going to redeem Vader? Now he's just going to kill Kylo, he's just going to kill Ben?
Where's the Luke who was going to redeem Vader when he beat him within an inch of his life and cut his hand off?
And was going to kill him. It was the Emperor's laugh that like snapped him out of it.
Yeah.
He was like, you get murder in his eyes.
This is a more mature version of Luke. He doesn't need the Emperor to laugh. He just ignites his lightsaber and goes, ooh, bad juju.
No, I should kill him, and then, no, I'll stop killing him, but even going that far is a massive betrayal of Luke's character. I mean, my goodness.
And my question is always, what was he supposed to do with Luke? This was what he was handed by J.J. Abrams. And he was like, okay, guess I gotta figure out what to do with this. And what he came up with is something that is true to Luke Skywalker's character all through the first trilogy, and makes sense given human nature.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's good storytelling.
I know you feel the same way about it.
Adam, when you went to the cinema, didn't you walk out thinking,
Adam,
I had a great time, I had an amazing time.
Back me up.
Back me up, dog. Come on.
The third movie would draw just a little bit from Rise of Skywalker, and a little bit from the original Trevorrow Duel of the Fates script, and start delving into the origin of the Jedi in order to explain the presence of a Cthulhu meets Galactus-inspired creature that is, at this point in time, kind of contained at the edge of the galaxy. This is the original Sith. it basically invented the dark side, meaning that anyone who uses dark side powers inadvertently canonize themselves to it.
I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head. I am all the Sith.
Which of course sets this character, this creature, up as the ultimate evil of the franchise. All of those ideas could be reworked to accommodate the sequel trilogy that we did get already existing. Just make a new trilogy with new characters set far enough in the future that you can just leave all this behind. Though if I did that, I'd be highly tempted to include a subplot about a witch who is amassing followers into a sort of cult worshipping her and her mighty deeds. She's going around preaching stories that all just seem a little too good to believe. She would then be exposed as a fraud, a deceiver, a false prophetess who thinks she can do some good using these strange new force powers to heal people, but everything that she's trying to do is unwittingly giving more power to this ultimate evil. The main character pities her, however, in a Frodo Gollum sort of sense, because he sees her as just a lost individual desperate for some positive attention. She's Rey, if you hadn't guessed. But honestly, that's probably way too meta for Star Wars. I like to harmonize things and make it all make sense, but the best course of action would probably be let it go. Move on. Let Star Wars die. You've already tried to kill it. Just let it rest. You're not getting the hype back. You're never going back to the way things were. Just move on. I'm talking to Disney, and I'm talking to you. Just move on. The video's over.